Cypress Financial Group presents the Retirement Roundtable Podcast with John Scallan. Get more at cypressfinancial.net. Now, let's get to the show.
My name is Mark Owens. John Scallan, I got to apologize. As you can probably hear, still a little hoarse from an incredible couple of days earlier this week. First and foremost, how you doing this weekend?
Well, my question is, have you been swinging from the chandeliers in all those country music bars you love so much? What's going on?
I wish my head would probably be hurting then, but right now it's just my throat. As you know, I'm a huge baseball fan, as we both are. And for a long time, I had the opportunity to work for the Atlanta Braves. I was there for the 2021 World Series season. I stepped back a couple of years ago, but I got the call from MLB, and they said, Mark, can you come work the All-Star game? And I was like,
so impressive, my friend. So impressive.
Darn right I can. So a little bit earlier this week, had the opportunity to go work at the ballpark, work at the Fan Village for the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game. And it was truly, as a kid that grew up watching baseball, playing baseball, never good enough to make it much further than the little leagues, but to have the opportunity to be out there at such an incredible event was one of the coolest couple of days of my life. It was truly a bucket list moment. Thank you. But I do apologize because the kid in me came out because I was super excited to be part of all this. So I apologize for my voice this weekend. But John, that's kind of like what you do for the families you serve. For me, it was a bucket list moment to work the All-Star game. But for you, John, for one of the families that you serve, if they come to you and they say, John, it's always been a dream of mine to take the entire family, the kids, the grandkids, to Disney, or it's been a dream for me and my bride to do a round-the-world cruise. How can you help put those dreams into reality without doing damage to the work already done to a retirement strategy?
Mark, great segue. Again, I'm just sitting here envious of this experience. But listen, your question is really a great question. I love this segue. Mark, I mean, if you have been a client of mine for any length of time, here's what you know about me personally and the entire team at Cypress Financial. We ask questions. We drill down. We try not to take a superficial answer when we are talking about your life, your financial life, your retirement, your hopes and your dreams. If you have been a client of mine for any length of time, 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, listen, I've got a client who's been with me for 42 years, okay? If you have been with us and these were some of the things that you had hoped for and dreamed for, I'm going to tell you, we've planned for it. We've talked about it. We have made decisions to carve out enough money into your liquidity funds that are not dead assets. They're still earning 5, 6, 7, in some cases 7.5%. Listen, we see this. People come in. Listen, like any stage of life, we're constantly changing as human beings. So, you retire at 60, 65 years old, things change. Your heart changes, your desires changes, your physical health most of the time starts going a little bit south. Maybe you're not as mobile, but maybe you have big dreams. Maybe you have things you've always wanted to do. And if we've had that opportunity to work with you and to plan with you, we have allocated the money for these types of things. Now, listen, I talked about change. Sometimes people say, hey, I have enough money. I'm real conservative with how I spend. But, especially after someone loses a spouse, we see significant changes in the things that they want to do. So, again, we have planned for this in your portfolio. I can't say we can cover it 100% every time, but we're going to drill down. We're going to talk to you, and we're going to really try to find out where your heart is, where your mind is, and try to prepare for you to have the income to do whatever you want to do in retirement.
For me, the opportunity to put a microphone in my hand, to be a host, to be an MC, and an All-Star game was a bucket list moment. But for you listening this weekend, maybe that bucket list is traveling to your home country, maybe taking the kids on an amazing vacation, maybe you and your spouse just traveling the world. Let's build that bucket with the help of John Scallan and the team at Cypress Financial to help live out those bucket list experiences. 504-732-1001. Again, 504-732-1001. We have a representative standing by, or you can always reach out via the homepage at cypressfinancial.net. And John, speaking of regrets, here's a story that could surprise you. Her name is Agnes. She worked her entire life. She saved every penny she could. Now, at the age of 79, she has more money than she knows what to do with. You would think that sounds like a success story, right? Not so much. She's miserable. She's haunted by all the vacations that she did not take, the dinners that she skipped, the experiences that she sacrificed. She calls it the miser's regret. So, John, when it comes to spending during your working years, how do you help people avoid becoming prisoners of their own savings?
You know, Agnes' story breaks my heart because I see this more than I should. People who turned savings into, such an obsession that they really forgot to live. But I also see the opposite extreme. People who spent everything and now can't even afford or are struggling to pay for their medications.
So, John, how do you help find that sweet spot between Agnes and her regrets and being broke?
Mark, so much of what we do at Cypress is really more than talking about the numbers. The advantage that I have, being that I have been in this profession for so long, is I've seen people who have done it right and people who have struggled. You know, we start with what I call, quote, permission to spend planning. We figure out exactly what kind of retirement lifestyle you want. Then we work backwards to calculate your savings needs. Once we know that number, everything above it becomes your guilt-free spending budget, Mark.
So it sounds like, John, that you're giving people permission to enjoy their money.
100%. Listen, here I am. I'm north of 60 years old. I'm having these same conversations internally. I'm having these same thoughts. How do I want to live? What do I want to do? What's important to me? How do I maximize every single day for the rest of my life? You know, I tell clients, you're not training for the money Olympics. You don't get extra points for dying with the biggest bank account. We build what I call a 3-bucket system: money for today's enjoyment, money for medium-term goals, and money for the long term, money to last you for a lifetime in retirement. And Mark, quite frankly, each bucket has a purpose.
Sometimes you have to play part-time therapist, if you will. So how do you handle people who feel guilty about spending the money that they think they should be saving?
I asked them this question, Mark. If you knew you had exactly 10 years left to live, would you rather have an extra $100,000 in the bank or $100,000 worth of memories with your family? That usually puts things in perspective pretty quickly.
Man, how a way to paint a picture. That's pretty powerful, John.
Well, here in Louisiana, I see too many people who never took that trip to Europe because they were saving for retirement. They end up too sick to travel when they finally retire. Man, I would encourage anyone listening, don't be like Agnes. Life is for living, but it's also for smart living.
But John, what about the people who want to leave money for their family, the kids, the grandkids?
Obviously, that is a huge portion of the planning process. We absolutely factor that into the plan. Many clients use life insurance. Many clients use money that they put away. But once you've set that number and funded your retirement and your legacy goals, here's the reality. You cannot take the money with you. Mark, it's an incredible, delicate balancing act, but there are products, solutions, and advice that can get you there. The goal isn't to be buried with the most money. It's to live fully.
So, John, if we want to reach out to you, sit down, schedule that initial, no cost, no obligation consultation, what's the best way to find you and the team at Cypress Financial?
Mark, I say this every week on the show. I hope it doesn't sound cheesy because it is truly the way I feel and every member of our team feels, it would be an honor. It would be a privilege to meet you, to shake hands, to talk about your future. Listen, at the end of the day, we want to give you something that moves the needle in your retirement, moves the needle in building a better retirement. We can be reached at 504-732-1001. We're on Causeway Boulevard in the heart of Metairie, right across the lake, North Shore, Florida Street, 2 offices to serve you. Again, we'd love to meet you. Let us help you build a better future for you and your family.
John, before we got started here this weekend, you were mentioning something about Jamie Dimon back in the news a couple of days ago, talking about bonds, talking about junk bonds. Let's talk about that for a second here. How is that going to affect us moving forward, and especially for our retirement savings?
This conversation about bonds is going to take a lot longer than I have on this show, but generally speaking, the safer the bond, the lower the interest rate. Let's talk about a 10-year treasury backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, somewhere hovering around 4.25 right now. Again, AAA bonds, these are referred to as investment grade bonds. They can be put out by the largest corporations in the world. And then you have what is referred to as junk bonds, a little bit of a riskier investment depending on who the holder of the bond is. But by having a small portion of your bond portfolio, maybe 5% or 10% with the highest quality, I don't call them junk bonds, I call them high yield bonds, can really move the needle in terms of getting you a better return out of your safe money investments.
Is now a good time to take a deeper look at bonds?
Absolutely, positively. I mean, I believe that, if you're over 35 years old, it's probably always a good idea to have exposure to bonds. I mean, these are dynamic financial products. Nobody really knows what the future holds, but conventional wisdom and what has always worked in the past is having bonds, safe investments in your overall portfolio as part of a strategy that can really help you de-risk some of your assets, especially when the market's going south.
All right, John. So let's talk about one of the biggest killers of a retirement plan, and those are the fees. Now, if you want to avoid germs on your next flight, you might think about the tray tables and the bathrooms. But a flight attendant recently revealed that sleeping against a window is also a bad idea because you never know how many passengers have wiped their hands on it. Ugh.
Ouch.
I was just like picturing that in my brain. Like I flew recently and I'm like, I had my head against.
Now I have something else to worry about on the flight. Thank you, my brother.
And I wasn't even thinking about like, who am I touching? And then I also thought, well, I left my DNA on that window too for the next person. So it's my germs as well. But John, in retirement accounts, some fees may be obvious, but many others are not. John, I read that the average American loses about $150,000 to hidden fees over their career. That's like buying a house, but then giving it away for free. How can you help detect some of these fees, these termites, if you will, in retirement portfolios?
I call these hidden fees. Again, you said it, and especially in Louisiana, we understand termites. These are retirement termites because they're quietly eating away at your financial foundation, Mark. I had a teacher come in who'd been contributing faithfully for 20 years to her 403B. Listen, we did one of these 403B, 401k x-rays. We used our Morningstar software to really drill down. And when we dug deeper, we discovered her funds were charging her over 2% annually in expense ratios. Quite frankly, this is just too high. She thought she was lean. She thought she was earning solid returns, but these fees were actually devouring a lot of growth that she otherwise would have had in her portfolio.
Did you say that was over 20 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I mean, it was. These high fees didn't just cost her the fee amount. Think about it. They cost her the growth on that money too. She could have had much more in her account if she'd been in lower cost funds. 20 years of compound growth, just gone.
How can you help adults spot these fee traps and, more importantly, avoid it?
Listen, whoever your money is with, whether it's funds or ETFs or managed accounts, there's always what's called an expense ratio. Now, when you talk to your advisor or you talk to your 401k or 403b custodian, this expense ratio is something you have a right to. You're not asking them for something that they don't have, easily access to. It might look like a small decimal number, maybe 0.05 versus 2%, but don't let that fool you. Over decades, that difference becomes massive wealth destruction to your overall portfolio.
Somebody's listening this weekend and they may not understand how much they're paying in fees, but the reality is it could be doing more damage and you may not know anything about it. So what can someone do if they discover that they're overpaying in fees?
There's always going to be a toll-free number on your statement. Call them. If you don't want to talk to anybody, you can go online to the custodian website. You can, go up to the search area and ask for expense cost, fee cost. And again, just digging around on that website. Hey, look, you can always talk to HR. HR should be able to easily get you all of the expenses associated with your retirement plan at work. Many companies don't realize their employees are getting taken advantage of. I've seen entire companies switch to better plans when employees spoke up. Second, make sure you're maximizing any company match first. Then consider supplementing with a lower cost option. Mark, I got to share this story with you. I had an employer, who had low participation rates in their, company pension plan. I stood in a room at one of these big organizations here in the city of New Orleans. And one of the questions I asked was, I said, if you could invest in your company's retirement plan and literally double your return without any risk, would you do it? About 10 of 200 people raised their hands. And I had to look around the room and say, this is not a trick question. If you could double your return without taking risk, would you do it? And, the answer to that question is simply your employer's match. This particular employer offered a 4% match, dollar for dollar, with no vesting requirements. Meaning if they left a week, a year, 2 years later, not only did they take their 4%, but they took the 4% that the employer matched. It was 100% liquid. These are the things where people can really move the needle to their retirement, Mark.
Investment advisory services offered through Cypress Financial Group, a registered investment advisor firm. Registration is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities offered through Cypress Financial Group, John Scallan, Louisiana Insurance License Number 1064997. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Cypress Financial Group. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties.